Have you ever walked into an ancient cathedral and felt something you couldn't explain, an energy that seemed older than the stones themselves? Have you ever wondered why these structures feel alive, as if they were built by hands that did not belong to ordinary human beings? And what if the truth is that the architects we were told about were never the real builders at all? Today, we are going to explore one of the most hidden, distorted, and controversial revelations about sacred architecture. The possibility that the great cathedrals were designed through knowledge humans once had, but later forgot, or perhaps knowledge that never belonged to humans in the first place. As we move deeper, you will notice that every symbol, every geometric pattern, and every piece of stone seems to whisper the same message. Something or someone guided their construction from behind the veil. And the more we uncover, the more the official story begins to crack. Cathedrals that appeared suddenly in history, with techniques that even modern engineers struggle to understand. Builders who claim to receive visions, and mathematical precision so perfect that it resembles cosmic intelligence more than medieval skill. If this already makes you question what you've always believed, then stay with me until the end, because the final revelation will change the way you look at every sacred building on earth. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and follow more hidden revelations like this one. You will not want to miss what we are about to uncover together, because each video reveals a piece of a truth buried for centuries, waiting for seekers like you to rediscover it. When we look at the official explanations given by historians, the construction of Europe's great cathedrals is usually presented as a triumph of medieval engineering, a sudden explosion of talent that emerged out of nowhere. But if you study their timelines carefully, a disturbing pattern appears. Many of these cathedrals were built far faster than the available tools, mathematics, or knowledge of the time should have allowed. Techniques such as lifting stones weighing several tons, creating perfect star-shaped vaults, or calculating angles aligned with astronomical events were far beyond what the average medieval builder could even imagine. And yet, these structures rose with such precision that even today, some architects admit they don't fully understand how they were achieved. This gap between the official story and the actual evidence is the problem that most people never notice, and the place where our investigation begins. When ancient builders were asked how they learned to create such structures, their answers were never simple. Many claimed they received visions, dreams, or instructions from the heavens. Others spoke of mysterious masters who appeared, taught a technique, and disappeared silently. In some manuscripts, there are references to invisible helpers, the Watchers, or the Shining Ones, figures that, according to some researchers, could be metaphors for spiritual beings or higher intelligences guiding humanity during brief windows of history. But here is where the narrative becomes even stranger. In many regions, the same architectural ideas appear at the exact same time, despite the lack of communication between builders across countries. How can the same sacred patterns emerge simultaneously, as if whispered into the minds of different people by a single source? That question alone opens the door to a possibility that traditional history refuses to consider. When we turn to Gnostic texts, the mystery deepens even further. The Gnostics believed that sacred geometry was not human invention, but a reflection of divine architecture, patterns from the higher realms that the soul remembers before incarnating. They wrote that truly sacred buildings are built from above to below, meaning that their design originates first in the invisible world and only then is manifested in the physical. If this interpretation is true, then the cathedrals were not just places of worship. They were intentional structures designed to hold, amplify, and transmit spiritual energy, something like ancient frequency machines or soul resonators. And according to some Gnostic writings, humans alone did not possess the knowledge to create such structures without guidance. They needed contact with beings of higher intelligence, what later traditions would call angels, messengers, or luminous intermediaries. At this point, you may be wondering, if such knowledge truly existed, who hid it from us? Why does history insist that medieval people invented everything from scratch? Some scholars believe the answer is simple. The Church had every reason to control the narrative. If cathedrals were built through spiritual insight, divine visions, or direct contact with higher intelligences, that would imply that ordinary people had access to the sacred without needing a religious institution as an intermediary. According to this interpretation, the Church preserved the buildings but buried the truth behind their creation. They replaced mystical explanations with practical ones, turning revelations into craftsmanship and turning higher guidance into architectural manuals. Over time, the link between the divine and the physical structure was forgotten or intentionally erased. But there is another layer to this mystery, one that many researchers hesitate to explore. Some esoteric traditions claim that humans once possessed far greater abilities, intuition, clairvoyance, and energetic perception that were later suppressed or lost. If medieval builders accessed even fragments of this forgotten knowledge, it might explain their sudden architectural brilliance. But if they didn't, then someone else must have taught them. Someone who understood the laws of harmony, vibration, and geometry far better than we do today. Someone who knew how to shape stone into a living symbol. Let me ask you, do you believe it is possible that cathedrals were designed with knowledge that came from beyond the human mind? Do you think the official story hides something deeper? Share your opinion in the comments, because your perspective might help us uncover the next piece of this puzzle. When we continue digging into the origins of cathedral architecture, we begin to find fragments of evidence in places most people never look. Obscure manuscripts, abandoned esoteric schools, and Gnostic writings that were hidden for centuries. These texts describe sacred knowledge that existed long before the medieval era, knowledge that appears suddenly in history and then fades again, as if humanity keeps forgetting and rediscovering the same divine blueprint. Some scholars believe this cycle hints at a truth few dare to consider, that the knowledge does not originate with humans at all, but arrives through contact with higher consciousness. For example, in several Gnostic traditions, the heavenly temple is described as a perfect geometric structure that exists in the spiritual realm, built not by human hands, but by luminous beings. When you compare the descriptions with the floor plans of Gothic cathedrals' cross-shaped structures, symmetry aligned with the sky, windows that mimic celestial patterns, the similarities are too strong to dismiss as coincidence. Another curious detail emerges when you study the builders themselves. Many of the master masons who designed these cathedrals left behind symbols that do not match Christian theology, but instead resemble ancient esoteric signs from Egypt, Persia, or early Judaism. These symbols may indicate that the builders were part of secret schools of knowledge that carried teachings older than Christianity teachings about the cosmos, the soul, and the invisible forces shaping reality. Some researchers argue that these symbols represent a coded language, a way for the builders to honor their true teachers without openly revealing them. If this is correct, it suggests that the cathedral architects were custodians of a hidden lineage, not merely craftsmen. They were transmitting ancient wisdom through stone, light, and geometry, and they relied on guidance that did not come from human logic. Historical anomalies reinforce this idea. In several regions, cathedral foundations were laid on top of even older sacred sites places used by earlier civilizations who also believed they were guided by divine beings. Instead of choosing locations at random, the builders selected points that matched energetic lines known today as ley lines. Some ancient traditions taught that these lines were streams of spiritual power flowing through the earth, and that certain beings, sometimes described as angels, sometimes as watchers, helped humans detect them. The fact that cathedrals were built precisely on these lines is astonishing, considering that medieval Europeans supposedly lacked the tools to measure them. How then did they find the exact locations used by cultures thousands of years earlier? Was this knowledge preserved in secret, or was it offered to them by something beyond human awareness? The Gnostics provide another layer to this mystery. They taught that the physical world is overseen by invisible forces, some benevolent, some manipulative. Among these forces were the archons, beings who, according to Gnostic belief, sought to distort spiritual truth and keep humanity asleep. If this perspective is taken symbolically, cathedrals could be seen as counterstructures, places designed to break the control of darkness by channeling divine light into the world. Some scholars believe that the true purpose of cathedral design was not merely architectural brilliance, but spiritual resistance. The arches, vaults, and windows were built in such a way that sunlight would transform into living patterns, bathing the interior in forms believed to disrupt the influence of lower forces. In this interpretation, the cathedrals stand as monuments built not by humans alone, but through inspiration given by higher beings who wanted to awaken our sleeping consciousness. What makes this idea even more compelling is the consistency across cultures. In Egypt, temples aligned with stars were said to be built under the instruction of gods. In Sumer, ziggurats were described as bridges between humans and the divine. In Mesoamerica, pyramids were built according to visions received by priests. It seems that across the ancient world, humans claimed the same thing. We did not build this alone. The knowledge came from above. So why do we assume that medieval cathedrals are the exception? Why do we believe that they suddenly invented techniques and knowledge that took other civilizations centuries to develop? Let me ask you directly. Do you think ancient builders around the world were guided by the same higher intelligence? Could the designs of the cathedrals be part of a global pattern? A message repeated across different eras waiting for someone like you to notice it? If this possibility intrigues you, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Your insight may reveal the next step of this investigation. As we move deeper into this mystery, one detail becomes impossible to ignore. The symbols carved into the stone of these cathedrals do not behave like decorations. They function like messages carefully placed, intentionally arranged, and often pointing to truths that medieval Christianity did not openly teach. You see spirals, stars, vesikas, roses, labyrinths, and mathematical ratios that were considered forbidden knowledge in the Middle Ages because they originated in ancient esoteric traditions. These symbols appear repeatedly, not because thousands of artisans coincidentally chose them, but because the builders understood that geometry is a language and someone had taught them how to read it. When you examine these designs, a startling pattern emerges. The same symbols appear in sacred sites across the world, from Egyptian temples to Indian mandalas. It is almost as if the cathedral builders were following a blueprint that humanity inherited from a source older than any religion. What is even more intriguing is how the geometry works. Many cathedrals are built according to the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, and cosmic proportions that mirror astronomical cycles. Yet medieval builders were not known for advanced mathematics. Most were illiterate, and few had access to complex calculations. So how did they achieve such precise geometry? Some historians argue that trial and error explains it, but this answer feels incomplete. A single mistake would cause an entire structure to collapse, yet most cathedrals stand perfectly balanced centuries later. Gnostic traditions tell a different story. They teach that sacred geometry was revealed to humanity by higher beings, and that those who mastered it could create structures aligned with divine energy. If this is true, then the cathedral builders were not inventing, they were remembering. Even the orientation of these buildings hints at something beyond human design. Most cathedrals are aligned to specific astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, star risings, or lunar cycles. Why would medieval Christians, who were often discouraged from practicing anything resembling astrology, secretly embed cosmic alignments into their churches? Some scholars believe it was a silent rebellion. Others say it was a way to preserve ancient wisdom without confronting the authority of the church. But Gnostic interpretations offer a more mystical explanation. They saw these alignments as openings, channels that allow spiritual energy to flow from higher realms into the physical world. If the builders believed this, then the cathedrals were designed not as monuments to human power, but as receiving stations for divine light. They were spiritual technologies disguised as places of worship. Another anomaly becomes clear when you examine who actually had access to this knowledge. Many of the builders belonged to secret brotherhoods, groups like the Freemasons' ancient predecessors, who guarded their teachings carefully. The church relied on them, but never fully controlled them. These brotherhoods claimed that their wisdom came from ancient masters, celestial architects, or the great teachers before the flood. Whether these descriptions refer to actual beings or symbolic archetypes is debated, but the point remains. The builders did not see themselves as the originators of the knowledge. They saw themselves as vessels, channels receiving information from an invisible source. And the deeper you go into their writings, the clearer it becomes that they believed this source was not human. At this point, you may be asking, if these symbols and geometries represented forbidden truths, why were they allowed inside Christian cathedrals at all? One explanation is that the church valued the structures for their beauty and grandeur, but underestimated or ignored the coded messages hidden within them. Another explanation is that some members of the church were aware, but preferred to let the secrets remain buried rather than risk disrupting their authority. And yet, the symbols remain there today, carved in stone, untouched by time, whispering the same message to those who know how to see. Look deeper. Nothing is what it seems. Let me ask you, when you walk into a cathedral, do you feel that the building is more than stone and wood? Do you sense that the architecture itself is communicating something? Tell me in the comments if you have ever felt that strange, indescribable presence inside these places. Your experiences might reveal patterns that historians have overlooked. As the pieces of this mystery begin to align, another question emerges, one that many people hesitate to confront. If cathedrals truly preserve knowledge that came from beyond ordinary human understanding, who decided to bury this truth? And why? The more you examine the historical record, the clearer it becomes that there was a deliberate removal of mystical interpretations from mainstream Christianity. Many early Christian texts that spoke of direct spiritual experience, inner revelation, and divine knowledge without intermediaries were suppressed or reclassified as heresy. The Nag Hammadi texts, for instance, reveal a version of Christianity where the divine is encountered internally, not through structures of authority. If people believed that they could access higher wisdom directly, institutions that relied on control would lose their power. Some scholars believe this is why the mystical origins of cathedral geometry and symbolism were gradually erased from official teachings. But according to Gnostic traditions, the suppression was not only political, it was spiritual. They believed that invisible forces, known as the archons, worked through systems of power to distort truth and keep humanity spiritually asleep. It is important to emphasize that this is a symbolic interpretation, not an accusation against any group. The Gnostics saw the archons as forces of ignorance and control, present wherever truth is feared or hidden. From this perspective, the removal of esoteric knowledge from cathedral history was not simply an institutional decision, but part of a deeper struggle between awakening and forgetting. The idea that the builders received guidance from higher beings would have challenged the authority of those who claimed to be the only representatives of the divine on earth. So, according to this view, the story was simplified. Cathedrals became human achievements, inspired by faith alone, and the rest was quietly forgotten. Yet fragments of the truth survived in unexpected places. In the margins of illuminated manuscripts, you find hints of beings described as luminous instructors, guiding presences, or the architects of the heavens. In the writings of certain mystics, there are references to voices that taught them geometry, visions that revealed the proportions of sacred buildings, and dreams where entire structures appeared fully formed. These accounts were often dismissed as metaphor or imagination, but when you compare them across regions, they become too consistent to ignore. It is as if different individuals in different eras were tapping into the same source of knowledge, a source that did not belong to the physical world. Some esoteric researchers even suggest that the higher beings who guided these builders were the same intelligences that influenced ancient civilizations thousands of years earlier. If this is true, it means cathedral architecture is part of a lineage that stretches back into prehistory. Another clue lies in the secrecy surrounding certain architectural guilds. These groups functioned like closed circles, passing knowledge only to those initiated. Their rituals included invocations, symbolic gestures, and meditative practices intended to attune the builders to something beyond themselves. Some modern historians interpret this as superstition, but others argue it was a method of opening the mind to higher intuition, a way for builders to receive designs rather than invent them. According to this interpretation, the greatest cathedrals were not planned on drafting tables. They descended into the minds of the builders through states of spiritual receptivity. The guilds protected these methods because they believed the knowledge was sacred and because they feared it could be misused if taken out of context. The final layer of silence comes from a much more human motivation: fear. If people of the past felt that spiritual beings were guiding them, they may have kept it quiet to avoid persecution. In medieval Europe, anyone claiming visions that did not align with official doctrine risked being accused of heresy. So imagine being a master builder who genuinely received inspiration from a source that could not be publicly explained. Would you openly admit it? Or would you conceal it behind technical manuals and symbolic carvings? Many researchers believe the builders chose silence, protecting the truth through symbols rather than words. Let me ask you something. Why do you think these secrets were hidden? Was it fear, control, ignorance, or something deeper? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective can help illuminate the next part of this investigation. Up until now, we have uncovered fragment symbols, suppressed knowledge, mysterious builders, and cosmic geometry, but every mystery eventually reaches a moment where the scattered pieces converge into a single, unavoidable conclusion. And this is where our investigation takes its most profound turn. The real revelation is not merely that cathedrals were built using advanced knowledge. It is that this knowledge was not human in origin. According to many Gnostic and esoteric traditions, sacred structures on earth were influenced by beings from higher realms, beings the ancients described as messengers, watchers, or luminous architects. They were not physical entities, but intelligences capable of transmitting ideas, patterns, and visions directly into the human mind. This is why so many master builders insisted their designs came from dreams or sudden inspiration. They were experiencing what some modern researchers call contact through consciousness, a phenomenon where the human mind becomes a receiver for something greater. What makes this revelation so powerful is that it explains what historians have never been able to: a sudden leap in architectural capability during the Middle Ages. Humans did not gradually develop cathedral techniques. We went from basic Romanesque structures to impossible Gothic marvels in a shockingly short period of time. Vaults rose higher, towers reached impossible heights, and walls dissolved into light through stained glass. These changes appeared almost overnight, as if someone flipped a switch in humanity's collective memory. Gnostic interpretations say that this switch was not a coincidence. They believe that, during certain periods of history, the veil between worlds becomes thinner, allowing higher knowledge to flow into human consciousness. If the builders of the cathedrals were working during one of these windows, it would explain why their achievements feel less like invention and more like revelation. This is also why many cathedrals share a subtle energy that people can feel but not explain. Visitors often describe a sense of elevation, clarity, or presence, even when they do not belong to the religion associated with the building. Some scientists suggest that the symmetry, acoustics, and geometry naturally influence the mind, producing a meditative effect. But Gnostic traditions say something deeper. They claim that cathedrals were intentionally designed as vibrational chambers, structures that transmit frequencies capable of awakening dormant aspects of the soul. If this is true, then the builders were not just constructing magnificent monuments, they were encoding spiritual technology into the architecture. And the only logical explanation for this level of sophistication is that they were guided by intelligences who understood the laws of the universe far better than humans did. This brings us to the heart of the revelation. Cathedrals were not created simply to honor God in a symbolic way. They were built to connect humanity with the divine in a direct, experiential way. The vertical lines, the pointed arches, the ribbed vaults, they pull the gaze upward, not as metaphor, but as energetic alignment. The stained glass windows do not just tell stories. They transform sunlight into living color vibrations. Even the labyrinths carved into cathedral floors were not decorative. They were maps of spiritual ascent. This entire design system reflects the Gnostic vision of the soul's journey back to the divine source. And if this knowledge was truly passed down by higher beings, then the cathedrals become more than buildings. They become messages, warnings, invitations, reminders that humanity has forgotten who it truly is. Some modern scholars argue that we should interpret all of this symbolically. But even symbolically, the message is profound. Cathedral builders believed they were collaborating with something greater than themselves. Their writings and symbols suggest they felt guided, protected, and inspired by an unseen presence. If you stand inside these buildings and listen carefully, it is as if they are whispering the same truth. You are never alone in your search for the divine. Now let me ask you, does this revelation resonate with you? Have you ever felt that cathedrals seem too alive, too intelligent, too perfect to be the work of ordinary human minds? Share your thoughts in the comments. Every opinion helps us piece together this ancient puzzle. If what we have uncovered so far is true, if cathedrals were built with knowledge transmitted by higher intelligences, then the final step is understanding what this means for us today. These buildings are not just relics of a mysterious past. They are reminders of a forgotten truth about human consciousness. The Gnostics taught that every human being carries a divine spark, a fragment of higher intelligence that once lived in harmony with the source of all creation. According to them, sacred structures were designed to awaken this spark, to help people remember who they truly are. If the cathedrals were influenced by higher beings, their ultimate purpose was not architectural glory, but inner transformation. They were built as external mirrors of an internal truth, that the same sacred geometry exists inside your soul, waiting to be awakened. This is where the mystery becomes personal. Modern science may not speak the language of the Gnostics, but it agrees on one profound point. Human consciousness is capable of far more than we understand. The architecture of the great cathedrals seems to interact with this consciousness, producing states of peace, clarity, or awe, even in people who have never studied spirituality. It is as if the buildings activate something dormant within us. Some researchers believe this effect comes from sound resonance, mathematical symmetry, or light diffusion. But Gnostic traditions would say the reason is much deeper. The cathedrals are built according to the same cosmic patterns that form the structure of consciousness itself. The building speaks to you because its design mirrors the architecture of your inner world. This understanding reshapes the way we view spirituality. Instead of seeing the divine as something distant, unreachable, or locked behind institutions, the Gnostic perspective suggests that direct connection is always possible, just as it was for the builders who received their visions. And if higher intelligences really did guide the construction of these sacred places, then perhaps they are still guiding us today, not through stone, but through intuition, insight, and quiet moments of clarity. Many people report sudden spiritual awakenings inside cathedrals, feelings of being watched over, or the sense that something is communicating without words. Whether these experiences come from the architecture itself or from a deeper source, they point to a truth that cannot be ignored. We are designed to connect with the divine. But this revelation also raises another question. If the cathedrals were built to awaken us, why do so many people today feel spiritually disconnected? Some scholars believe this is because the true purpose of these structures was hidden for centuries. People visited them without understanding their deeper meaning, reducing them to tourist attractions or architectural feats. But others say that the awakening still happens, quietly, in those who are ready to perceive it. And perhaps that is why you are here, watching this video. Sometimes these ancient structures call out to specific individuals, people whose inner spark is ready to ignite again. This leads us to one final reflection. If the knowledge that built the cathedrals came from higher realms, then you carry a piece of that same higher realm within you. The cathedrals are physical symbols of a spiritual truth, that humans are not meant to live limited, disconnected lives. We are meant to rise, to remember, to awaken. The Gnostics believed that enlightenment does not come from outside. It comes from recalling the truth that already lives within the soul. The cathedrals were built as reminders, giant stone mirrors, reflecting our forgotten potential. So let me ask you, have you ever felt that something inside you is trying to wake up? Have you ever sensed that your intuition, your dreams, or your sudden insights come from a place beyond ordinary thought? Share your experiences in the comments, because these moments may be signs that your inner cathedral, this one built by divine intelligence, is calling you back to yourself. When we put all the pieces together, the impossible geometry, the ancient symbols, the suppressed teachings, the sudden leap in human capability, and the persistent testimonies of visions and guidance, one truth stands out with overwhelming clarity. The great cathedrals of the world were not born solely from human hands. They were shaped by a dialogue between this world and the invisible one. And whether you interpret the invisible architects as higher beings, divine intelligence, ancestral memory, or the awakened potential of human consciousness, the message remains the same. Humanity is far more extraordinary than we have been taught. These cathedrals were built as reminders, not reminders of power or authority or institutional control, but reminders of your own inner connection to the divine. Every arch that rises toward the heavens echoes the upward movement of your spirit. Every beam of stained glass light mirrors the colors of your inner awakening. Every labyrinth carved into ancient floors symbolizes the long journey of the soul back to its origin. The builders, guided or inspired by something beyond themselves, left these messages for future seekers, for people like you who feel that the world holds secrets buried beneath familiar stories, and who sense that truth is always waiting behind the veil. And now the question becomes, what will you do with this revelation? Will you let the knowledge settle inside you, awakening something that has been sleeping? Will you look at the world around you differently, from cathedrals to ancient sites, from your own dreams to the signs that appear when you least expect them? Remember, the same intelligence that shaped these sacred structures is the intelligence that speaks through intuition, that stirs in your heart, that guides you when you are quiet, enough to listen. The cathedral is not just out there in the world. It is within you, built of light, memory, and a truth you have always carried. Before this journey ends, I want to invite you to take part in something important. If you felt a spark in this video, if something resonated, stirred, or awakened inside you, leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your theories, or even your own experiences inside sacred places. Your comment is not just engagement. It is a way of keeping these ancient truths alive. When you interact, you help build a community of seekers who are also trying to remember what humanity once knew. And if you want to continue exploring revelations that challenge the official story and open doors to forgotten knowledge, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every new subscriber strengthens this space where truth, mystery, and spiritual curiosity can flourish without fear. Together, we are rebuilding the path back to the wisdom that was hidden for centuries. So I leave you with one final question that may follow you long after this video ends. What if the real cathedral is your consciousness, and it has been waiting for you to open its doors?